Gorilla comm going 10.8. Amateur radio gear versus professional grade radio gear. In this video, I'm going to address a criticism that I read about my channel some time ago. So I would like to address a particular question. I focus too much on hand gear and not enough on sort of the professional grade gear like Motorola and Kenwoods, the professional stuff that the police guys have out there, fire, EMS, even military grade equipment. That's a valid point, and that's a valid sort of criticism as to why I don't focus on that gear as much as I do the ham gear that I modify and show what it could do and all that good stuff. And in this video I want to address that in a little bit of detail and see if you guys could follow my method of madness concerning about this matter. So there is no shortage of surplus professional grade equipment out there, public safety radio equipment and so forth, even military stuff out there. They're out there in the market, and they're dropping in price until the supply dries out. But here you see a progression of Motorola radios from 1990s, the early 90s, and a progression to the mid 90s, 2000s. And over here on this table, you see something that's their latest and greatest. So there is no shortage of source material for me to show you guys and everything, but that's pretty much stuff for the choir. This channel is mainly focused for the new guys, the guys that want to go into communications from a tactical perspective. You see, I'm not your normal YouTube ham channel. Nothing wrong with that. But that's just not my flavor. I like operating in the shadows, in the gray area of communications, if you will. But it pertains to my interest in prepping or survivalism or whatever you want to call it these days. It all revolves around that and how I like to play with the rules or not play with the rules to have a tactical advantage when things go way south. I'm talking about social collapse. But in the meantime, I focus the majority of my material to the things pertaining to a rule of law today. See, I don't want to get these new guys in trouble. I want them to know the laws, to know exactly what they can or cannot do. I show both sides of the house, the good side and the bad side. So, and they could make their own decision of what they want to do. I just want to show them how to do it correctly. So if they do decide to go rogue on the channel, they're not going to interfere with somebody else without knowing how to kind of operate. Sounds all shading and everything, but you know, with all these influx of cheap Chinese transceivers out in the market, it's easy for a newbie to pick one of those up, program it into a public safety channel, and start yakking on it like if it was his own, you know, bullshit channel. And that's pretty much what I'm trying to avoid through awareness and knowledge of what's out there, what's available to you guys, the civilian, and where not to thread during peacetime. That is pretty much the whole focus of how I go about showing comm gear on my channel. And of course I do dabble in the guerrilla side of the aisle. The biggest reason why I prefer amateur radio gear over the professional grade products out there or radios is because I think it's more adaptable for a prepper than any other piece of equipment out there. Aside from military gear. And this is the big reason why I stick with it. And if I had a choice, I would pick amateur gear over the professional gear any day of the week, unless I get encryption with it or some sort of voice kind of masking capabilities with it. Here I have two examples of what I'm talking about. This is an Elenco amateur radio, and this is a Kenwood professional grade radio. This is VHF, and this is VHF and UHF. That's one big reason. This has two bands that I could work on instead of the one band that this one currently only uses. Mind you, this thing here cost me $350, I think. This here, brand new at the time, was maybe $850. The professional grade equipment does have better electronics, but it also has more restrictions on them by law. This is a FCC Part 90 radio. It's an FCC rule on the books, and it's under Part 90. That's why we call it a Part 90 radio. It follows those particular technical requirements that they need to build within this radio to make it a Part 90 radio. And the professional services, businesses, the police, EMS, the public safety guys, all those guys are required to utilize a Part 90 radio by law. The amateur radio is a Part 97, I believe. That has its own rules all to themselves. I cannot use this radio to talk on a police frequency. This radio is capable of tuning into a VHF ham channel. The ham channel, you are allotted a large group of frequencies in VHF and UHF within this radio here. So you got 144 megahertz all the way up to 148.995 megahertz and all the channels in between. That's a big chunk of frequencies for ham radio operators to use out there to play with, provided that you have a license. It's another story. On the police radio, let's say a certain city has a certain mid-sized city has a police force, and they brought 3 frequencies. They're licensed for those 3 frequencies only, and they could only use those 3 frequencies. So they don't have the spectrum that the hams use. So that will give the ham radio more capabilities, more channels to play with, and so forth, where the police radio is stuck on 3 to 10 frequencies depending on licensing. But the thing is, with the licensing, that costs money. Anyway, we're talking about the technical aspects of it for a prepper's perspective. So lots of channels available on the ham channel, and there's a modification to the ham radios that you could do that would open up the radio for expanded transmit capabilities. A lot of the radios have this particular modification. Some of them you actually have to either cut a wire, reset, take out a resistor. You have to go deep into the electronics of the device to kind of apply that modification. The engineers, they could have an ability to block everything and not have any modifications applied to it to do that particular function, but for some reason a lot of these amateur radio companies are still providing that particular back door to open up the frequency spectrum of this radio. So a public safety frequency in VHF is 150 megahertz, ham is 144, but with the Mars cap modification on this, I could put this in free run mode where you could, you know, here are all the frequencies for ham, but then with this thing expanded, I could actually punch in a public safety frequencies into this. So let's say 151.880. That's actually Muir's number 1 or 2, one of those two. But it's in the public safety sort of spectrum of the band. And I will not transmit on this right now because it's illegal. I cannot do that. I can listen all I want, but I cannot transmit, and I'm not going to. But the potential is there for me to do it. And why do I want that? After societal collapse sort of situation. And that is another layer of of flexibility that I have with the ham radio that I don't have with a public safety radio. This is really reminiscent of the military radios. On those radios, they do have a large chunk of frequencies. So I'm going to go back in time here in the mid 90s, early 90s, of the AN/PRC 77, or affectionately called Prick 77. At the time, that was the man-packable radio allotted to all the squad level or platoon level, even fire teams, comms, man-packable comms to go out into the field and in the VHF frequency range. And their range was from 30 megahertz to 75.95 megahertz. They didn't have channel names or anything like that, or they just, with the knob, pretty much just tuned into it. Let's say 45.25, if that was assigned to their net at that particular moment. Now this is the military radios now of back when. I'm sure they're like that today, but a little bit more updated, or a hell of a lot updated. This is reminiscent of that, where you could, you know, tune into that frequency. I'm going to go back to the ham frequencies here. 144.10, let's say. So yeah, you could tune right into that with your frequency knob here, or punch it in with the keypad here. This here, you don't have that capabilities. Some radios, if the feature is what do you call it, enabled onto them, you could be able to hand sort of program your mobile, but you would have to put in like a password and go through a menu system. It's not as instant as this ham radio here, where I could just go on the face pad and punch it in there and I am done. On the professional grade radio, by law, they have to use some sort of a password. They have to make it hard for the user to go into that particular mode. And not all radios are capable of doing that mode. You would need a laptop to program the frequencies in there. So once again, the ham radio, as far as options and flexibility, beat out the Part 90 radios. Here's another example of the same concept. Here we have our professional grade radio, and this one here is a Bendix King GPH Commander, and here we have the Yaesu VX7R, the ultimate rugged preparedness radio, and I still stand by that claim today. So this is your ham radio, and these are your professional grade radios. Again, it's the same thing. By law, you cannot hand input frequencies in here easily. If for whatever reason you need to change to a frequency that's not in your comm plan, something got what do you call it, compromised out there in the field, and you want to go to a alternate frequency that you guys set apart, you can't just come in here and start plugging in 151 dot whatever. It's not going to let you do that. You're going to have to like turn it off, turn it on while pressing home. Then it's going to ask you for a password, and then from that you have to go through some menus to go ahead and do that. Same thing with this. Here you have to short out. This is actually one of the easiest ones out of all the radios in the market to sort of hand modify the frequency on this here. You need to short out a couple of pins here. There's a little plug that you could buy to do that with, or you could do it the old salty way by taking a knife or something and placing it in within the pins here that needs to be shorted out. That's how I roll. But and then you could modify the channels with this particular radio. Here you don't need to do that. Like right now, I'm on 144.39 there, and if I need to go to my secret squirrel channel or whatever, or back up to the backup channel that's not programmed into this, I could go 151.880 and I'm there. I'm not going to transmit because that would be illegal for me to do on this radio. but the potential is there. That's all we're talking about here is potential. You have the potential to do that with this radio during the worst of times of societal collapse. That is the only scenario that particular option is viable, to be able to do that to a frequency that you're not licensed to be on. That's what I focus on. The differences between what's legal and what is not legal. During happy times, like, you know, some years ago, to the toughest time this nation might sort of face sometime in the future, hopefully not within my lifetime or a few generations down the road. I cannot predict that. But that's pretty much what sums up the Gorilla Comm channel. How to operate legally, practice legally, but have the knowledge to do things the guerrilla way when the time comes. Like I said, this is not a happy channel. I deal with really bad sort of dark subjects here, and believe it or not, it interests me. I like prepping. I like the survivalism mindset. I guess it was in me from as a young child growing up poor in the city. It was all about survival. There was a lot of morality there too, so don't think that I'm a brute out there, survival of the fittest. I do take care of the weaker ones out there, and that's part of my thing here too. So as far as the gear themselves, the professional grade gear and the ham gear, now as far as the ham gear, I'm talking about the more traditional companies out there like Yaesu, EMCOMM, Kenwood, and a handful of others, Alinco, that's been in the market for many years, other than the newcomers that you're seeing out there in the market today, like the Chinese ones, Bofang, Ocean, and TYT. Those will not last 1 hour of abuse that these guys would endure for decades. And I stand by that statement at this time right now. This I had since 2008, and it's still going strong. I abused the living crap out of this. As a matter of fact, these two guys here pretty much deployed together, and you can see the scuffs and marks on this big boy here. This guy suffered the same sort of abuse along with it, and it has never failed me. Never. Original battery still keeps a really good long charge. Kick ass. The only problems that I have now is this channel knob here is loose, but it's still functional. That is it. The volume knob is still good to go. The antenna mount is still good. The specs on this radio is still holding. I did an FCC check on this to see how it's performing. It hasn't deviated at all since I've owned this radio. This radio, same thing. This E.M. Johnson's radio is a piece of crap, but I'm not going to get into that. You guys will probably cannot afford this. I know I cannot. That's another thing with amateur versus professional. This here cost me at the time $325. This here brand new cost $750. The newer radios like this guy right here, $1,100, $1,200. It's the surplus stuff that's going to be cheaper, but not by much. Motorola keeps its value very well, and they're hardcore. They don't break, not hardly. But that's one thing. The cost, the pain in the ass of programming these things. These two here, you need software to program with. You have software for this guy right here, but you can also hand program it on the fly. More flexibility for when you're out there caught in the space. Whereas if you need to go to a secret scroll channel on this, you're going to have to go back to base camp into the comm unit to have them program that frequency into this. And that's what we do to these guys here every fire season. on every incident. So I'm sure there's a lot of other attributes to the ham radio that I haven't covered that's what I think superior over the business class models. But for the prepper, I think the amateur radio has vastly more options for you to use than these guys over here. So with an amateur radio, you could practice all you want legally and find out what these bands are capable of doing, and you can make a better informed, experienced decision on what is viable or beneficial to your particular scenario of where you live at. And if you get a higher grade license like a general or a extra class, then you could transmit halfway across the world to another radio operator somewhere else, or across the country here in the United States, coast to coast practically. That is why I concentrate more on the amateur radio than I do the public safety surplus gear or military surplus stuff, because you are legally able to use this and practice with it right now, where those other pieces of equipment, there is laws against you using those radios in the ham sort of band or service, though thousands and thousands of people across the world do that. So there you have it, my honest opinion about this matter and why I do the things I do, or concentrate more on the amateur radio side of the house over the commercial stuff. But I do cover the commercial stuff, don't get me wrong, it's very viable, and if you feel comfortable about getting that gear and making it work for you, more power to you. It may actually be beneficial for when you sort of give somebody a loaner radio or stuff like that, and not give them a ham radio with the capabilities of changing frequencies and stuff. Sometimes you could give them a part 90 radio like this or this that has that blocking feature where you can't program into it, and just lock in and program a bank of channels that are preset for your particular incident, whether it be societal collapse or something to that effect. And we could possibly get into detail later about that, and that's like the comm plan operational side of the house. This is more like the technical aspect of why amateur radio is superior than the commercial grade product as far as flexibility. To the slew of new subscribers that just subscribed in the last couple of months, this is pretty much what you could expect from the Gorilla Comm channel, is no BS, non-sugar-coated, honest opinions about subjects of communications in general, from the happy-go-lucky Disneyland, sugar-coated ham stuff, to the darker side of communications as far as societal collapse and doing things unconventionally to get that upper hand over whatever adversaries that you might face out in the field. I enjoy the subject, that's why I talk about it a lot. It's a mental exercise on what you could do to sort of counteract that particular obstacle during that extreme condition of societal collapse. I'm just mimicking our government. I'm preparing myself for when that does happen. Then I don't have to guess and reinvent the wheel when it does happen. I can have my game plan already on paper, and all I have to do is put it into practice. But for now, I just go into the ham radio, communicate that way, test out my gear. Recently I'm in the GMRS radio service, so my family could get involved and we could all communicate legally within the family group here. That's all I have is our family unit here, and I don't belong to a group or anything like that, though I do have some friends nearby that we might mutually support as far as comms that way or something like that. But that's pretty much what it is, and Gorilla Comm going 10-10.